Welcome to the Friday, August 23rd Nominating Convention episode of On Iowa Politics. This week on the podcast, the Democratic National Convention is in full swing, and an unusual turn of events as Iowa Republicans attempt to nominate a statehouse candidate. Hello, everyone. I'm Aaron Murphy, the Des Moines bureau chief for the Gazette in Cedar Rapids. We're a little light this week. Everybody taking summer vacation or getting ready for back to school. I don't know what the deal is, but we do have Gazette Deputy Bureau Chief Tom Barton with us. Hello, Tom.
Hello, Aaron.
And Jared McNett of the Sioux City Journal is here as well. Hello, Jared.
Drove to Chicago. All things no. All things no.
Ooh. That one went over
It's
my
a little.
head.
That's a little Chicago by Sufjan Stevens for like five people who know who that is.
I am not among those five. Well done, though. All right. Speaking of, first up this week, the Democratic National Convention is roaring along in Chicago. Sidebar: Milwaukee is better. Fear the deer. Go Brewers. Iowa's role at the National Convention is not so sexy anymore after the National Party pulled the plug on Iowa Democrats' first in the nation caucuses. The parade of potential 2028 and 2032ers is marching to other states' breakfast meetings at the convention this year instead of Iowa's. By the way, it just felt so weird to write 2032ers as a nearing election down the road. That seems like some far off future date in a sci-fi movie, but 2032 is not that far away. Jared, you spoke to one of the convention delegates, one of the Iowa Democrats from your neck of the woods, and in fact, as I understand, a rare convention delegate from your neck of the woods.
Yep. So last week I interviewed Caitlin Dray, who is the lone national delegate from Woodbury County and one of only two from all of Northwest Iowa, the other being Patrick Kelly of Dickinson County by the lakes. Yeah, a lot of the rest of the contingent, when I was looking at it, is, Lynn County, Polk County, the places you would expect maybe for as far as the biggest cities. This is the first time that Dre's been to a DNC, and going in, she said that she's never been so nervous about managing a calendar, which was probably my favorite thing that she said when I talked to her. Also, going into the convention, I asked her kind of just to reflect on how much of a political whirlwind the past month has been for Democrats. It was a month and a day ago, as of the time of this recording, that Biden dropped out of the race, which is really funny to think about that's only been a month and a day. And so Dre said that she's enthusiastic about the change because it showed that the Democratic Party was listening to a number of its constituents. And then when I followed up and asked her if she thought the ticket is now stronger than it was before, she said no question. That was the entirety of the response to that question. And then since she's been there, I've been messaging with her and gotten a few updates. She said one of the biggest surprises for her was Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock, who spoke on Monday night and very much gave, not surprisingly, a sermon-esque kind of speech, because he does have that background as a reverend. Right. She called his speech beautiful and moving. She said Tuesday night's highlight was Michelle Obama, and she said it wasn't a surprise that Michelle Obama was the highlight. And then she talked about the roll call vote as well, and said that it was an electric party that showcased everything that is good and right about our country. Although I had a bone to pick with the DNC DJ who was playing music for each state. Kool and the Gang is what they went with for Iowa, which I still don't entirely understand. As far as I know from my research, none of them have any ties to Iowa, so I don't know what was up with that.
I was wondering the same thing. I wish I had asked someone now. I thought that was an odd choice for Iowa. I don't know where that one came from.
There's maybe still time to do some reporting on that, I guess.
Yeah. There you go. Maybe we'll get an email from a listener over the next few days, and we can solve that Kool and the Gang Iowa connection mystery. Let me pick you guys' brains here, and Jared, we can keep rolling with you if you want to start. I don't know how much of the convention you've been watching, but I'm wondering if there's been any moments that stood out to you as among those that you have checked in.
I think it's some of the same stuff that kind of everybody was saying. You know, Michelle Obama, like I was saying that Dre was saying, got a really big pop on Tuesday. Although that's not entirely a surprise because it seems like she ends up having a bigger pop because she is so limited in how often she like does any politicking. It's usually only at these conventions and maybe like a couple of like rallies and whatnot. Obviously, Oprah was a big deal because if you have Oprah at anything, it's going to be a big
Right.
deal considering like the list of like biggest non-sports television events ever. Oprah is like up and down that list.
Yeah.
Um, Another thing though, it's been too long on these speeches. Like, I don't know anyone of any political persuasion is clamoring to hear from Chris Coons or Kathy Hochul. And, you know, just if you're a party wanting to showcase your talent, I don't know why you would push them out of prime time. That seems like a very weird choice on their part. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that and look, um I'm not as upset about this as the national journalists seem to be on Monday night with President Biden getting pushed out. About three-fourths of my timeline was reporters complaining about and just aghast at Biden being slid down. But I am with you on that in the standpoint of like, and I just know for myself the few times I've checked in, I haven't made it to the end of all these nights to be blunt. There's been some late evenings in this programming. I kind of follow up on it the next day. How about you, Tom? You been sticking them out?
The only ones that the only night that I stuck out was the night where we heard from both Michelle and Barack Obama, and the only reason why, and I'll make this quick. I had a medical procedure the next day that required me to be sleep deprived, and
Oh,
so
you had to stay up anyways.
I had to stay up,
That's funny.
anyways.
And I
Um,
was the opposite there. That was the one that I didn't make because I moved my daughter into school all day, so I was wiped out. There was no way I was making it to the end of that one.
So that was the only night that I stuck it out for the entirety of it. The other ones I just caught highlights, you know,
Yeah.
the next day. You know, the big thing that stuck out to me, obviously Monday night was Joe Biden's night. It was his opportunity to cement his legacy as president. But I guess what stood out to me was that you know, it wasn't until about roughly 30 minutes into his speech that, you know, we finally heard reference to Kamala Harris not as a subsidiary. You know, it seems like it took a while for him in that speech to finally get to the moment of trying to pass the torch. You know, up to that point, it was all about, you know, Kamala and we, and it just seemed like it took a long time for him to get to the point of making the case about passing the torch,
Right.
her taking on this campaign.
That is one of the nights I stuck it out. I heard all of the president's speech. For the longest time, it just felt like a Biden stump speech. It was the
It seemed
same.
like the speech he was going to give
Yeah,
had he been the
was.
nominee on Thursday.
Yeah.
Well, and it very much seems like the speech or the case that he was making to voters back in 2020 that look, elect me because we need to save democracy, and that was his big message. You know, I saved democracy. Now it's up to Vice President Harris to preserve it. And so it just seemed like a lot of what we heard from Biden on Monday night was a lot of the case that he was making to voters, you know, 4 years ago, essentially. And again, it wasn't until well into this to the speech that we started to hear him make the case for Vice President Harris and for the Harris Walls ticket. Um, and I guess the only other thing I would add is that, you know, as much as he tried, or as much as Monday night and his speech was about cementing his legacy, that legacy is ultimately going to be tied to Kamala Harris and how she performs
Right.
in November, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
If she ends up winning and if she ends up beating Donald Trump, you know, Biden very much solidifies that legacy
Then he
that
looks
he
like a
was
genius
that he looks
Yeah.
for
great.
like Yeah.
and that he was trying to very much cement on Monday night. If she loses, and Trump wins another term in the White House, it's all going to be about Biden waited too long, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that he should have bowed out and made this decision much sooner, to clear the way for Vice President Harris.
Or even sooner to have a full-fledged primary.
That right, absolutely.
I was going to say also on the Biden front, this is a little bit of a different avenue, but I was thinking about that this seems like more a send off for more than one Democratic Party mainstay for this convention. Biden, of course, gave his big speech Monday, which might be the last one of his presidency, especially as things get closer and closer to the election. And then, Bill Clinton is younger than Biden, but he was looking his age when he was giving his speech Wednesday too.
Yeah, I missed former President Clinton's speech, and I just caught highlights of Hillary Clinton's address. But again, caught both Michelle and Barack Obama, and both she and her husband, former President Barack Obama, just absolutely pilloried Donald Trump. And again, she had the line of the night, if not the line of the convention so far, which is, who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs?
Yeah, that one that one scored. There's no way. There's no two ways about that one.
Yep. Yeah. It's funny. I've been seeing on my social media feed different memes and takes on that, and a lot of them are comparing and contrasting Michelle Obama from the 2020 cycle to today, saying, when they go low, we go high. And then the next image is from Game of Thrones of a dragon just taking out, a bunch of soldiers on the battlefield with fire. And
nice.
it just, I mean, it is an interesting juxtaposition, right, of how Democrats, and specifically the Obamas, treated Trump, this last cycle compared to what we saw from them, this week. They did not hold back. It was a double dose of Obama firepower.
Yeah.
They haven't held back when they've gone after Trump, but they haven't gone after Trump as much as you might have thought. Like when it's happened, it's been pretty severe. But I have a feeling if it had still been Biden, there would have been a lot more of that, because that would have been like the main move they probably would have had if Biden was still the nominee.
Yeah, interesting. Maybe. I'd say the one thing that is kind of overarching, and I should note for bookkeeping's sake, regular listeners know this, but we tape at Thursday afternoon, so all of this discussion is before the big speech by Vice President Kamala Harris, the nominee. So we don't have that one yet as we sit here and talk on Thursday afternoon. Obviously, there's been just and there almost always is, to a certain extent, kind of a party vibe at these things. They try to come off that way anyways. And I don't mean celebration as the fact that they're acting like they already won the election. They're not, but it has been a very big celebration. Jared mentioned the roll call and the music and Little John and all that. So it's been fascinating to me to see, knowing that this group still has a lot of work to do. As much as it does seem like the change from Joe Biden to Kamala Harris as the nominee has put the party in at the very least a better position. Nothing is locked up at this point 3 months out either. So there's it's going to be interesting to me to watch that transition from the convention to this, the election starting in earnest, and how that goes to from the celebrating and the partying in Chicago to the work getting done here in these next few months. And look, that's a good thing to have. I don't mean this to sound like, I'm not trying to sound like they shouldn't be celebrating or having a good time, enjoying themselves, whatever. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's just kind of fascinating to me to watch, knowing that when that's clock strikes midnight at the convention, that there's a lot of work to done, and it'll be interesting to see how that translates. If that, if there's any energy or momentum that carries forward there into November.
73 days until election day.
73. Well, at least we're in double digits. That feels good to hear, at least. Bringing things back home here to Iowa, there's a little bit of intrigue in what in most cases would be a pretty ho-hum event, a party's nomination for a statehouse election. I'm just going to give the generic background here, and then I'm going to let Tom take over. But this is so interesting. So in Iowa, if a major political party doesn't have anyone run in the primary election, that party's leadership and their delegates can later in the year, and there's a window, nominate a candidate to run in that fall's general election for that office. And this happens fairly often. It's not at all uncommon. It's usually a pretty simple and straightforward process. And this is the example we'll work our way into. Say there's a statehouse seat in a county, no Republican runs in the primary, they can still go back in this window later in the summer, and the party can nominate a person, and then that person can be on the ballot as the Republican nominee for that office in November. Pan camera to Lynn County about a couple weeks ago. And please, Tom, take it from here.
Will do. So a pair of Lynn County Republicans are disputing the nomination of the leader of the local chapter of Moms for Liberty as the party's nominee for a state house seat. So, oh man, when was this? So a week ago Tuesday, not this past Tuesday, but a week ago Tuesday, Lynn County Republicans held a special nominating convention and heard pitches from two Republicans seeking to run for Iowa House District 73, which, as Erin alluded to, was without a Republican candidate since no one ran in the June primary. The district covers a portion of Cedar Rapids and much of northern and eastern Marion, and the district is currently represented by Democrat Elizabeth Wilson, who's seeking re-election to a second term. As I mentioned, two Republicans are seeking to challenge the Democratic incumbent. Geraldine Jones, chair of the Lynn County chapter of Moms for Liberty, and Jim Conklin, a former chair of the Lynn County Republican Party Central Committee. First off, it took them more than an hour to actually start the convention because there was a disagreement on whether a quorum had been met. And then once it was determined that a quorum had been met, both Jones and Conklin made their pitches to precinct committee members who live in the district. Conklin received 9 votes. Geraldine Jones received 7 votes, and Conklin was declared the winner that night by a Republican Party of Iowa staffer. And after adjourning the special nominating convention, they formalized paperwork to submit to the Iowa Secretary of State's office for Jim Conklin to be listed on the ballot this fall. That included a signed and notarized affidavit of candidacy and a convention certificate. However, the very next day, the Republican Party of Iowa audited the votes cast and discovered what they said was a tabulation error. The Republican Party of Iowa said that error, flipped the already close election, deeming Geraldine Jones the correct winner of the convention. So the state party deemed Jones the nominee by weighted vote based on the voting strength of each precinct represented at the convention. So Iowa code allows a state party to adopt a convention or bylaws allowing votes cast by party precinct committee members to be made proportionate to the vote cast for the party's candidate for the office in question in the respective precincts at the last general election for the office. So that's very wordy. Essentially what that boils down to is that a committee member from a precinct with more active GOP voters essentially gets more of a say. But Jim Conklin and the person who served as the temporary chair of the special nominating convention contend that the state party came to that conclusion too late and no one contested the results the night of the convention. And so the person who chaired the special nominating convention told me on Monday that he was not prepared to sign paperwork establishing Geraldine Jones as the nominee unless, quote, someone can show me that we can arbitrarily change the results after the fact. He did say that he could make a strong case for either side, that a strong case could be made both for Geraldine Jones as well as Jim Conklin. Conklin as well told me on Monday that he plans to file an objection with the Iowa Secretary of State's office challenging Geraldine Jones' nomination. The deadline to file a written objection with the Secretary of State's office is, I think, 5 p.m. August 29th. After that, a hearing would be scheduled with the state objection panel, which is Iowa Secretary of State Paul Pate, Iowa Attorney General Brenna Byrd, Iowa State Auditor Rob Sand. Pate and Byrd are Republicans. Rob Sand is a Democrat. Geraldine Jones, who unsuccessfully ran in 2021 for the Linn-Mar School Board, told me in a statement that Conklin was wrongly announced as the nominee at the convention and that the audit by the state party correctly recognized her as the winner.
Is your understanding of this, Tom, is the state objection panel, is that the most likely where this is going to ultimately wind up and get decided, or is there some other possibility in the interim?
I mean, that's my understanding.
Yeah.
So,
which, by the way, they're already planning to meet to hear challenges to some libertarian candidacies, which we talked about on last week's podcast.
Right. So I should mention, so the Secretary of State's office, as of Monday afternoon, said that it had yet to receive the nomination paperwork for House District 73.
Oh, they haven't even received the first paperwork to start with.
Right. So essentially, right. So until that paperwork is received, my understanding is Jim Conklin can't file an objection. So
because there's nothing to object to.
There's nothing to object to, right? So they have to receive the paperwork, and then Jim Conklin has to file an objection. Then it gets heard by the objection panel. Yeah. The Secretary of State's office did say that the ultimate answer will come from state party bylaws regarding how proportional voting works at conventions. So it sounds like, at least at this point, that Geraldine Jones' nomination will most likely be upheld. But I mean, we'll see what happens. Again, they still need to receive the nomination paperwork. They need to get the written objection, and then it's up to the objection panel to decide what ultimately happens.
Tom, you explained everything perfectly well. That is incredibly confusing.
Right? Who said parliamentary procedure is no fun?
I was just about to say, whoever the rules knower was that stumbled across that or had that at the ready. Good work on them.
And I told Tom, I mean, I've been on the Iowa beat now for a dozen years. I don't remember ever having to be aware of or report on weighted voting in a candidate nominating process. I'm pretty sure that's the first time I've heard that. I could be wrong. Maybe that got memory hold somewhere, but that was fascinating. That I never heard of that when Tom mentioned that in his story.
See, I was
first for me too.
I was expecting this to end in a coin flip because obviously we've had some of
those
flips before.
Yeah. That's a caucus special right there. The coin flips to decide on delegates. Good Lord. Yeah. How did Iowa Democrats ever lose that first in the nation status? Yeah, so this is gonna be fat, and that's I love that wrinkle at the end there, Tom. I apologize if I had missed that before, but from what you're hearing from the Secretary of State's office, that they're really gonna lean on party bylaws, and I guess that makes sense, right? Because this is a party function, not it's a party nominating its candidates. It's not a government function, so it would make sense for the state to lean on a reading of party bylaws to decide that, which would seem to indicate one direction over the other here.
Right. The other wrinkle, though, to throw into this is
please do. Right. We don't have enough yet.
So I mean, you're absolutely correct, and it does make sense again that the Secretary of State's office is going to defer to the state party bylaws and how they handle that weighted or proportional voting. The challenge or the question that Jim Conklin is likely going to present when he files his objection is, okay, well, so we have essentially two nominees, right? His nomination was signed and notarized.
Yep.
So there's already a signed and notarized affidavit out there declaring him the nominee. The person who chaired the special nominating convention apparently is or has refused to sign off on a separate affidavit and convention certificate that declares Geraldine Jones the nominee. So the question is, can the state party actually submit paperwork to the Secretary of State's office saying that Geraldine Jones is the nominee if the chair of that special nominating convention
won't sign
off on it and won't sign off on the convention certificate, won't sign off on the meeting minutes, saying that, this is what happened. And yes, she is the nominee. So you essentially, have kind of, again, two affidavits out there. Which one do you pick? Which one do you choose?
Yeah. Wow.
And just for anybody who might not know, Tom, what's like kind of the lean for that district?
Oh, for the general election, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's the Democratic incumbent Elizabeth Wilson narrowly won that district, and it went to a recount. And so she won following a recount, but it was close. I want to say that it was decided by, I don't know, like around 300 votes, something.
You talked just long enough, Tom, for me to find it on the election results. By exactly 300.
Look at that.
72-97 to 69-97.
So it matters quite a bit who the nominee is.
Yeah. So that definitely, yes, could be a competitive race, a competitive seat, depending on who they pick as the nominee. If it's the the Moms for Liberty candidate, we'll see how that goes. It didn't work out so well for them in Iowa during the school board elections last year, but with the state house race, obviously it could be different.
Electorate. Yep.
Right, different electorate. And school board is supposed to be seen as kind of a more nonpartisan position, whereas this is obviously very much a partisan position. So again, different electorate, different people voting. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say whoever does end up being the nominee, if they don't win, there will be a lot of finger pointing, I would imagine.
Right. From whomever is left out. Yeah. See, real quick, Tom, as we wrap it up, because I know we mentioned the Libertarian candidacy challenges, the state objection panel is already meeting on that next week. Is the timeline set for them to get that? If it's going to go there also in that same meeting, or is that too soon? They're going to have to turn around and do this one at another time.
Yeah. I mean, that I didn't get a solid answer on, because I think it all boils down to when the objection gets filed.
Yeah.
So I was told by the Secretary of State's office that the deadline to file a written objection in this case, in this instance, is August 29th. So that would be after.
Be even after the meeting if they wait until the deadline. Yeah.
Because I think they're scheduled to meet on the 27th or 28th?
28th, yep.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So they're meeting on the 28th to consider the challenges for the Libertarian candidates.
Right.
So I guess depending on when everything gets filed, they could do it then.
But it have to move pretty quickly at this point.
It would have to move pretty quickly. Yeah. So I'm thinking that it'd probably be after that it'd have to meet again.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Interesting. Well, regardless, whenever that happens, we'll be following that one, because man, what a fascinating little story that is unfolding for us. All right, that's gonna wrap it up for this episode of Iowa Politics. We appreciate you checking in. If you're not already, please subscribe to us on your streaming service of choice or on YouTube, where you should also smash that like button. You can also find the podcast each week on your preferred Gazette or Lee newspaper website. We love the clicks there too. And now that you've listened to the On Iowa Politics podcast, make sure you also subscribe to the On Iowa Politics newsletter, where every morning, most mornings, take a few off in the summer here, in your inbox, you'll receive all the latest politics and government coverage from our team. You can subscribe to that free newsletter at the Gazette's website, thegazette.com. And lastly, don't forget that the work of everyone you heard here today, and those who weren't with us today, because they're a bunch of slackers, hopefully we got everybody back next week, can be found on the pages and websites of the Quad City Times, Muscatine Journal, Cedar Rapids Gazette, Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier, Mason City Globe Gazette, Council Bluffs Daily Nonpareil, and the Sioux City Journal. For Tom Barton, Jared McNett, and our producer Bailey.cichon, I'm Aaron Murphy. Be well, everyone, and be good.